This model, not the real one.
You're on, Mayor.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our special City Council meeting. Today is Friday, April 3rd, 2020. It's approximately 9:30 a.m. This meeting, of course, is being streamed live over Zoom. So thank you for those who are joining us. I have to admit, it's actually pretty interesting, and I think it's been doing quite well. I just want to take a quick moment to thank our staff, Adrian and Udell and Dominic, everyone from the communications office, Jennifer, for a great job that you guys do. Okay, so we have first order of business is I need to read a conflict of interest statement. And so this is where I'll ask if any member of the city staff, city manager, or city council has any known conflict of interest on any item on the agenda.
None.
None. None.
Okay, seeing none. Okay, now I'm going to need a motion, a second. What's on the floor is going to be resolution number 20-132.
So moved.
Who is that? Can you?
I'm sorry, Mayor, it's Cassandra Ganda.
Okay.
Gabe Vasquez.
Okay, so is the motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Cassandra Gandara, second by City Councilor Gabe Vasquez. And I believe Natalie Green will be discussing.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Natalie Green with Community Development. The resolution before you is a budget adjustment for emergency assistance for the impact from COVID-19. As you all know, on March 11th, 2020, the state of New Mexico declared a state of public health emergency. COVID-19 does pose a threat to the health and safety and well-being of our residents, and our community is in need for provide expanded support services. Council has requested that staff prepare a resolution to allocate approximately $1 million in emergency assistance from the TELSHOR Facility Fund. Part of the attachment in your packet, attachment A, has a list of those agencies, and they may require additional council approval for contracts, but we can cover that in the following slides. It will be a budget adjustment. It's a transfer from the TELSHOR fund to the healthcare fund, which is the fund that we typically have expenses out of. And again, that funding is for essential and critical services to combat the effects of COVID-19 in the Las Cruces community. Council has proposed partnering with some agencies in our community. Those agencies have the ability to receive up to a specific dollar amount. Those would be FYI, Las Cruces Public Schools, La Casa, which is the domestic violence shelter, La Piñon, which is our social service agency that primarily works with victims of sexual assault, Casa de Peregrinos, which is food insecurity resources across the city and the county, Community of Hope, which would be able to do emergency rental assistance or homeless prevention to keep people who are unable to pay their rent or have the threat of being evicted or losing their, not being able to pay their mortgage. They could provide that type of assistance. And CAA would also be able to provide a variety of assistance for individuals and families. And again, that'd be rental assistance, mortgage assistance, and then some critical need gift cards. And then Fishes and Loaves provides food boxes for the elderly. And those are the dollar amounts that council has recommended. Council is also recommending that we fund some critical services in the city of Las Cruces, which the utilities department would increase their utility assistance fund for members of the community that cannot afford to pay their water bill, trash bill, and gas bills. Quality of life, we are looking to do essential supply fund. We also have considered various departments for drivers. I know Memorial Medical mentioned that we need drivers to drive COVID tests to Albuquerque or the state labs Thursday through Monday, or Thursday through Sunday, I'm sorry. And then also possibly expanding Meals on Wheels or some sort of meal delivery. We also need PPE for city staff, and that would be staff that primarily has person-to-person contact. So our cashiers, our permit techs, many of our utility workers, basically our frontline essential staff. And then economic development, there has been mention of a economic crisis flash assessment, which I'm sure the economic development can speak more to, but I believe it's some sort of analysis of how COVID is impacting the economics around Las Cruces and the state. And so you have your standard council options to vote yes, no, or amend as you see fit. And I will stand for questions.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. Before you do, let me just share with council that I took this list from our meeting on the 30th of March. And so these allocations, although may not necessarily be the total amount, but this was, I think, a good start. I must say that I was mentioning that, or I was just thinking that we probably need to have, in addition to our regular council meeting this coming Monday, that we may want to have another meeting either 1 week from today or maybe even Thursday, because 1 week from today is Good Friday. We may want to have it on Thursday. And if there's some things that you see that were left out, or if you feel that we need to increase the amount, but I wanted to go with this at the very minimum based on some of the things that I'd heard. So let's see here. One thing I wanted to talk about, the 100,000 Quality of Life Essential Supply Fund, what that was, and I believe Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Gondara was talking about, she wanted to make sure that those who needed diapers and formula and milk and just all those necessities, not necessarily give them away, but to sell them at cost, so that if we were to acquire these goods, and then we might be able to put them out through various outlets there in the city. And the economic development assessment I have here also with me is Davin Lopez, who's going to talk a little bit about that. And I think that's about it. But what I'm trying to get at is, please don't think that this list is a final list. We're more than happy to see what other things that I may have missed, and if we need to add to it to go from there. And again, this is kind of more of a working meeting. I mean, I envision us probably having 2 meetings a week for the next until we need it. Okay, thanks, Natalie. So with that, let's see, anyone raise their hand? Oh,
Mayor,
Joanna Bencomo, beat you to the punch there, Councilor Vasquez.
Everyone was being shy this morning. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Natalie, for your presentation. Natalie, so you've probably spoken to each of these organizations, right?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Bencoma, I have reached out to many of the agencies to develop scopes of work and to figure out the finer details.
So CAA, how do you know about how many people they'll be able to serve with this 50,000?
One moment. So they are looking to do some sort of voucher system. They will include up to $700 in rental and mortgage assistance. I think they're proposing a total of 60 clients based on the budget.
So $50,000 will be able to help maybe 100 people at CAA. I think it's too low. I think that an agency who's going to be assisting people directly with paying their mortgage and their rent, which, April 1st was a couple days ago. If not a lot of folks were in that situation, they're probably going to be May 1st. And so I really want to advocate to make sure that fund for CAA is significantly larger. I think that the type of service they're providing is exactly what people need. I'm curious about why.
Counselor, if I could jump in real quick.
Sure.
I'll take responsibility for that amount. I know that Counselor Vasquez was talking about he wanted to somehow get monies to those that might otherwise not qualify under unemployment and such. I honestly wasn't 100% certain what CAA did, and so I'm glad Natalie reached out to them. But as I mentioned, I'll be more than happy to, if this is an initial start. I don't have a problem even if we adjust it. I think Jennifer's on the line if we can do that. Or, as I mentioned, we may want to have for next week the additional funding.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I would prefer adjusting it now. We've been in contact with the Community Foundation, and the amount of applications they've received from people who've been recently laid off, furloughed, everything from restaurant workers to dental hygienists. Like, this is real. It's happening in our community, and we have to put this money out there for agencies that already have the system and the structure to be able to do so. I think, for me, someone like Community Action Agency, who's been doing this for a really long time, who never asks for status at the door, who says, yes, we will help you because you need it, as an agent, I think they're good stewards of public dollars. And I think, when I think about $50,000 helping maybe 60, 75 people, when there's hundreds and hundreds of people in our community who are needing that assistance, I think we should increase it now and think about a second round later in the month.
Let me get, looks like David Dollahan, the Assistant City Manager, wants to jump in. David, you there?
Sorry, Mayor, working on. Good morning, Mayor, members of council. I just want to remind you that this is probably the first of a couple of iterations, and we have to execute contracts with all of these agencies or contract amendments that we haven't gotten in place. Loaves and fishes, it's a very small amount. I think even for Community Action Agency, it's within the city manager's threshold to execute contracts without council's authorization. But as we add more money to projects, we're facing potential procurement issues or contracting issues that require your approval. The special meetings will help us, and we can get those on time. But we haven't worked out the specifics with CAA. If Natalie can chime in, I think we're correct. We don't have a current agreement with CAA, and we haven't worked out the specs to make it work.
You're full screen. If you go on screen, this will go to the side over here. So go ahead and close it.
So that was it, Mayor.
Okay, thanks, David. Thank you for that. So
I'm curious, Natalie, can you answer that? Does CAA have, what's the process right now with CAA?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Bencomo, we do have an existing contract with CAA, so we would do a contract amendment, and it would be below, at 50,000, it would be below the threshold, so I could execute that with the city manager's authority. Otherwise, I would have to bring back a contract amendment unless it's a special meeting at the April 20th council meeting.
That's
Natalie, what's the amount?
from now.
What's the amount you can go without? 75,000, is that it?
Mr. Mayor, I will defer to legal, but I believe it is 75,000.
Okay, and Councilor Bencomo, if we were to do that, or if we can bump this up to 70 or whatever, 75, and then again, like I said, I have no problem having another meeting next week, and then that can put things in place that are needed. I will say, from what I'm hearing, there's several landlords out there that are working with their tenants, but I think there are obviously a few that are probably being really tough, and I think this is where this is helpful. But nonetheless, I agree with you, and I'm more than happy to help increase whatever we can now to get it out quickly, and then next week for the future amounts.
Honestly, I'm okay with that. I would like to see it increase today. And then, I think people are going to need help more than once. So if we come back and discuss this at a later time, I think that will be necessary. Thank you.
And next is Councilor Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the staff as well for organizing another Zoom meeting for us and going on round 2 of these meetings. I also appreciate all the members of the public who have provided feedback and comments prior to this meeting. I did want to say that I do second Councilor Bencomo's thoughts in terms of matching the taxpayer money to taxpayer needs at this point. And I think these are small amounts, and I think this is kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg at this point. We need to do more. I feel like we work for the people of this city, and I think the people are really hurting. I don't see this as our money, as the city's money. I really see this as the people's money. And so I think we need to get this right. I think we need to act boldly and decisively, quickly. I think people are counting on us. And so from the proposal that we discussed last week or just a few days ago, and Mayor, your proposal that you put forth, this seems to be just a tiny fraction of what was discussed, including the written proposal that we submitted for all of council to see. And so I'm just a little bit worried that that we're not going to get there to where we, I think, initially intended based on our discussions and the written proposals, Mayor, both from you and from some members of the council here. And so I think, families across the city before the coronavirus, nearly a third of them are living at or below the poverty line. These are folks who already are counting on all kinds of safety net programs and assistance. And I know some of these families don't have the luxury of waiting like other people do, especially when they're getting, close to the first of the month. I know the anxiety grows amongst families here, especially those who have lost their jobs. So I think they need help today. In fact, I think they needed help yesterday, right? And so I completely support raising as much of the limit as we can today, but also want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the previous discussion and the proposals that we had discussed. Some of the things that I see listed here through the network of different nonprofits that we can potentially help are no different than what we proposed in the last iteration of this discussion. Critical need gift cards is something that we proposed to the tune of, potentially $1.5 million through the Together Las Cruces Fund. Homeless prevention, well, that's all part, people need cash in hand to be able to pay rent, to be able to pay mortgages, paying bills. The same thing that we're doing with the city's utilities assistance fund is what essentially some of this cash that people would do, or how it would help them. So I don't see what we were proposing previously any different than what we're proposing today. I just see that it's a smaller amount, and we just really like to make sure that on the next go around, if council agrees, Mayor, if you agree, that we talk about big numbers, right? That we look at potentially, splitting $750,000 between the Community Action Agency and another $750,000 to the Community Foundation of Southern New Mexico's Together Las Cruces Fund. That puts us at 1.5 million, split evenly between these two assistance programs. And, they have the way they have the system in which to determine how folks in our community get these funds, this cash assistance. And so I think it would behoove us to do that on the next go around, so that we don't have to come back right over and over, because what we're seeing in the economy is something greater than the Great Depression, right? Like, this is the jobs numbers that were posted, and the unemployment numbers that are just skyrocketing in New Mexico and across the country. Like, this is something serious here. This is something like the country's never seen before. And so I think we need to act accordingly, and that means using as much resources as we can to help people stay afloat. But also, that money goes back into our local economy. And so, we talk about the need for GRT and the need for small business support. Well, if we put money in people's pockets, that stuff that goes back into the local economy. So we keep people afloat, we help people until they can get back on their feet. And so absolutely supportive of raising the amount to CAA at this point to $75,000. but would also just ask that on the next go around, hopefully we can look at some much bigger numbers akin to that matches what the problem is out there. So that's all I'll say. But other than that, thank you, Mayor, for putting together this great list of local nonprofits that we can help. And I know folks are counting on us to continue to do more. So thank you.
Hey, let me get with Natalie real quick. So Natalie, let me ask you something. If we had put 100,000 or 150,000, even if we have a contract in place or we have that working relationship in place, by having that amount larger than what is within the city manager's purview, would that have had to have, would we, I guess I should say, if we were to do 150, can you advance them 75 and then have to do whatever you need to do to get the remaining 75? Or that actually is a whole different situation, and you may have to actually do whatever you need to do, whether you go out to bid or however you need to do that. Can you respond to that, please? Because that's why I try to keep some of these amounts lower, knowing that I knew that we had we've given monies to La Casa, La Piñon, Casa de Peregrinos. I knew we had done that. And then when we go to government, like Las Cruces Public Schools, we can do that easily. But can you share with us how that works, please?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to have to defer to legal or the procurement office or the city manager's office for that.
Okay. Whoever wants to jump in, that'd be fine.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, this is David Maestas, interim city manager. You are correct in noting that if it is above the city manager's approval, we would have to go and modify the contract, amend the contract first, or either go under contract if we didn't have one in place. Rather than if it is under the city manager approval, well, we can begin working with the contract amendment simply by city manager approval and not having to come back to council for the contract amendment. That is a process through our procurement, and therefore by putting the numbers under 75,000, we potentially have the ability to get going quicker on utilizing that funding than having to come back to another special meeting. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, absolutely. And I wanted to kind of point that out to my colleagues. Now, the other thing is, Councilor and Vasquez, about Together Fund Las Cruces. Now, this is a new 501c3. I believe, and I don't know, and I think Jennifer's on the conference here, that the difference between going with them and not knowing their checks and balances in place to deal with, because this money can only be given, to my knowledge, to those that meet a certain income threshold. I mean, I know the city of Albuquerque did something. Well, then I have since found out they've been using a foundation. We don't have that foundation.
Yes.
They actually have their own city foundation.
Mayor,
We do have a foundation, Mayor.
Yes, Mayor. The Together Las Cruces Fund is simply the name of a program that's administered by the Community Foundation. So this is an organization we've done business with in the past. In fact, during the refugee situation, there's actually an existing city contract through a resolution we previously supported that supported local nonprofits through the Community Foundation. So there's both an established relationship, existing contract, to my understanding, between us and the Community Foundation. And in talking with them, they don't have an income threshold, as far as I know, for that fund.
Okay, let me get Jennifer is on the line, and I apologize. I was not that familiar with it. So Jennifer.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm not really sure what the question is. The idea here was that we would have the ability to act quickly to remain under $75,000. So the maximum you could go is $74,999 in order not to have to come back to council. The idea was to go ahead and make that amendment and to give that amount quickly and then come back with amendments that would exceed that threshold. It was the way to act quickly to just start spending money right now without having to come back to council with contract amendments, which we intend to do with larger amounts. It was just a way to act faster.
Okay, so we could then say next week, have monies to go to, well, let's put it this way. So let's say we did two questions. One, can an amendment be made for, say, 74,000 for the Together Las Cruces Fund? Is one question. And two, so then they would be allowed to distribute however they see fit within certain guidelines, of course.
That's correct. And it depends on whether or not this organization falls under one of the exemptions under the procurement code. Right now, we're looking at section 24-64 of the procurement code that requires your approval, but there are also a list of exemptions. So we have to look at which organization and what services they are providing.
And so perhaps either David Dollahan, David Maestas, or Natalie Green can kind of fill us in a little bit about the Together Las Cruces Fund and the role that they played during the asylum seekers. I guess listening to my colleagues here, if either any of them want to jump on the line and the video to kind of share with us what exactly they did. And
Mr. Mayor, if
yes,
I may,
David?
David Dolan for the record, members of council. The difference with the Community Foundation and the Asylum Seeker Assistance, it was for a reimbursement to nonprofits that had verifiable expenses in providing assistance to the asylum seekers prior to the city's detailed involvement with it. So it was a reimbursement for documented expenses specific to that event beforehand. So that makes that situation different with the Community Foundation. Under the Las Cruces fund that they're proposing now, we don't have a relationship with them in that sense. We can, but we face procurement issues, just like the city attorney said, related to at least contracting. My preliminary, very quick discussions and review of their application, they would not, based on their current application, would not meet our requirements for qualifying participants. That doesn't mean it can't be done. It can be, but we have to develop a contract and an understanding for how they qualify people. We want this. This is a needs-based assistance program, and that. So we still have to meet the requirements of the state law and city ordinances. Doesn't mean it can't be done. The other thing that you have to realize is this money will not go out the door instantly just by having contracts in place. They're going to have to spend money to get reimbursement from us. State law prohibits us from cutting checks in advance where service is not rendered, and so they will have to front some money. We deal with this with our nonprofits all the time. So they've worked out their cash flow in that regards. So we still have to complete those requirements. Doesn't mean it can't be done. And it has to be for eligible participants and for qualified expenses. But those are details that we have to work out with each of the nonprofits, not only in their scope between the nonprofits, but ensuring that they're capable of meeting the requirements for the participants.
Yeah.
We want to help the most needy in this situation. We have to help the sick and indigent in this regards. So it doesn't mean we can't do it. We can, but you realize it does take time.
Mayor,
Okay.
if I may, and Mr. Dollahan, thank you. Yes, those discussions were had with the executive director at the Community Foundation, Ms. Tara Van Winter, who committed to changing the application process or questionnaire to make applicants eligible in whatever way is compliant with the city's requirements. And so, again, I would just urge staff or County City Manager Maestas to get moving on this quickly, right? Because this has been a proposal that's been out there for a week already, And it's a little troubling that nobody has had conversations with the Community Foundation of Southern New Mexico, because the reality is that they, through private donations, have been the organization that's been helping people out now. And so they're getting money out the door as we're trying to decide here how we can best help our community. And so if we can make it possible, again, this is in my opinion, one of the most dire of emergencies that our community has ever faced in terms of what this economic impact has on local families, and what that means for the health and safety and well-being of households that are in poverty, that can't pay bills. There's a lot of other effects other than economic effects, when people are suffering, and that's domestic violence, and that's child abuse, and that's welfare issues, that's people going hungry. So it's more than just money, it's all the effects of not having money that I just want us to remind ourselves that are out there. And so if this is a viable option, it'd be great to have two streams of funding going out to the needy people in our community, one administered by the Community Foundation, one administered by the Community Action Agency, so that you can really reach the most people as you can. If it's completely not possible, then let's focus on the Community Action Agency and what we need to make sure that they're able to get out as much money out the door. It really doesn't matter to me which way we do it. I just want to make sure that we're having these conversations now so that we can allocate the money that's needed in the community. So thank you again, Mayor, for bringing those important points up, and Mr. Dallahan for your explanation on that.
Thank you, Councillor. And after listening to what you're saying, it's possible, and David Dallahan, jump in if you need to. You're saying that they've already given out monies, depending on the amount, and if they have kept track of certain status that the city's going to need to be able to prove, in case we're audited, where these monies went. Then it sounds, and then of course once we get that relationship with them, it sounds like they might be able to be reimbursed for those that have already been expended. Is that correct, David?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, that is correct. But our concern is anyone that they previously provided assistance to may not meet the qualifications that we needed them to. We have to start that dialogue and work with them. I asked for the application last week. I understand that Ms. Van Winter is more than willing to change the application, but there may be other avenues within the community that can help us also assist that. Community Action Agency, Community of Hope, La Piñon, La Casa, all those agencies that we already have existing relationships with fully understand our requirements and can move things forward probably a little bit faster, but we will have that dialogue.
Thank you, Mr. Dallahan. And if I just may, those are all different services that are offered through those different nonprofits. What the Community Foundation is doing is putting cash in people's pockets, right? And I think that's really important. I would like for us and for staff, for Mayor, for our city manager, to find every possible way to say yes in this situation, right? We're not in a regular situation where, we should be putting up roadblocks on this kind of stuff. We should work through these problems as hard, as difficult, as legally challenging as they are. We have to find solutions, and we have willing community partners out there. So it's a little frustrating to hear of all the roadblocks when clearly there's a way to do this, but it's not the time to take the easy way out, in my opinion. We have to figure out how to get financial relief out to folks. So thank you for all that you would be willing to do to make that happen.
Counselor, I know you're very frustrated. Let me tell you something. When it's all said and done and this is over, I'm sure the Attorney General's office is not going to, things will be moved on, and we have to be accountable to, that's not our money, that's the public's money. And I understand your frustration. We are doing everything we can. I implore you that we are. But again, we'll do the best we can, but I'm trying to get this thing expedited. And also just a real quick clarification. The initial proposal I had was like 1.4 million, and this one here's $1 million. And so, like I said, I wanted to just get something going fast, and then if we have to next week, we'll do it again. Until but as you heard, David, we'll look at that, the Together Las Cruces Fund, and see how the mechanism can be in place for those that they've, that they will be helping and can be reimbursed by the city. And then hopefully touch on some of the others that, whether it's rent assistance with food assistance and such. And so we're doing our best here. And, like I said, when I saw Albuquerque did what they did, but they're being real tight-lipped. I'm trying to get as much as I can out of them. I can't even get a text back from the Attorney General. I mean, everybody is just slammed right now. So,
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
okay, we have Mayor Pro Tem Gandara who wishes to speak, and then Councilor Beta Stubu.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity. I am extremely grateful to all of the staff and administration. Mr. Maestas continues to be very forthcoming and communicative anytime I've had any questions or concerns. So I want to say publicly thank you. I know how hard this is working from home. I agree this is uncharted, unprecedented times, and we should act quickly and swiftly. I am in agreement to the attachment and the areas I think that are most important. I would agree with Councilor Bencomo if we can increase the Thriving Families with Community Action Agency to 75,000. That is what I'd like to see. In terms of the PPEs for city staff, in terms of the P2P contact, I don't know what that is. And if I could encourage the work through the Las Cruces creatives that has already developed the shields and the face masks, it would be helpful, especially as I continue to hear my colleagues in the child welfare arena that are still continuing to do home visits, checking safety and the welfare of children and families, that they are in dire need of PPEs as well, which is a class in itself that doesn't get looked at or included in as a medical sort of piece. And I think that we need to protect as many people as we can, especially as we move into these next few weeks where Las Cruces Public Schools are continuing to assess the safety and well-being of children and whether children have access to internet and virtual learning. They're probably going to have to get into people's homes and ensure that they're equipped to work through the virtual learning that should be happening. And so that would be one of my recommendations. If it means Families and Youth Incorporated leases that building out to Las Cruces Creative, so if there is a way that we can even use some of the funding to connect and ensure that these folks, all these folks that are providing services, that the PPEs can get tied into that so that we ensure that especially my partners and colleagues at the child welfare arena get those PPEs. Secondly, I'm so happy about the Essential Supply Fund. I think that is really important. I continue to hear the issues that surround folks, especially those that are providing services or have shelter or emergency care, having dire, just major trouble getting the basic necessities. I also agree with Councilor Vasquez around the Community Foundation. They are a foundation that's been in existence for some time. I have the application. It's online. You can see that. I expect staff to have those conversations swiftly with Community Foundation. They have given at least $55,000 to the most needy, and they have an application process that consists of sort of like, are you unemployed? Have you, when? And literally they denied some folks who were laid off prior to the COVID situation, and basically refused them the money because of falsifying information, that kind of thing. So in the conversations that I've had with Tara Winters, I've also sent her a income guidelines that lots of entities or agencies follow, which is 185% to 200% poverty. So I gave her an example. She is in agreement to change the process to meet those, our guidelines. And so I'd like to see that also occur. I had a question about the economic development, the economic crisis flash assessment, and what that would entail. Mayor, you had indicated that Davin is on the call. I'd like to see what that is and how we can, because I had sent you information about the Community Foundation in Albuquerque working with the city of Albuquerque as it relates to the stimulus, right, of businesses, helping give grants to small businesses. And I continue to be concerned with our small businesses and how we're going to lift them up out of this. And I know you've made some calls to them and you've indicated they've been tight-lipped. So would that be something that Davin can help with as it relates to this, working with our own community foundation?
Okay. Good question. But if I may, Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to leave that. If you notice, we have the community partners, and then we go down to the city of Las Cruces.
Oh, sorry.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
yes.
If we could stick with the community partners, get all that kind of ironed out, and then move to the city of Las Cruces, which that falls under. One of the things that I want to say, and I want to clarify, when I said I wasn't aware about the foundation, I am aware of the community foundation. Don't get me wrong, but years ago, when Memorial Medical Center belonged to the city and county, they had a Memorial Medical Center Foundation. The Las Cruces Public Schools has a foundation. The community foundation is not the city of Las Cruces, is what I'm trying to get at. And ABQ1 is, to my knowledge, the city of Albuquerque's own foundation. Nobody else. It's their own foundation. That's what I'm trying to get at. So, I mean, that is, I think that is something there that I always thought that we could do ourselves, but until I realized after reading some information, because I was initially told from the city of Albuquerque that they were really stretching the LIDA funds. And I thought, okay, it just doesn't sound like we could go that route. But then after reading another report, it said ABQ1, which is their own foundation, is giving
I
this
wasn't
money.
aware.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. That's what I was trying to get at. So I needed to clarify that. And okay, that's where the hiccup is now we may be able to have our own fund. Let's say we were to call it I don't know, Adelante Las Cruces, and you have it parked there in the community foundation. Then we start raising money. Then that's not the city's money. That's money that the city can use or we can help raise. I believe that's something there that I haven't had that discussion with our city attorney, but I believe if Albuquerque has one, we can do that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And just a couple of more points, Mayor. Did we get confirmation from Las Cruces Public Schools with $150,000 for the internet and virtual learning?
Yes, they definitely could use that. They're very, very appreciative. They can either use Comcast or CenturyLink. I think they were even talking about hotspots. I mean, they already have a plan on how they can use this money.
Yes. Okay, good.
And earlier, as I was mentioning, giving government to government, there's no cap, and we can do this immediately.
Yes. So the other things, it was mentioned about gift cards, and I'm assuming to our grocery stores and maybe our food, our restaurants and whatever. And one of the things that I like is that we still have, I feel really strongly that we still have to stimulate our economy in a way, and this would be a good way of doing it. And I don't know, because of all the rules and the funding and whatnot, if we could outline in these contracts that as much as, like, for example, La Casa is using hotels, hotels in our community, to assist the domestic violence victims and whatnot. And if we can ask them to ensure that we are looking at as many hotels as we can, and the food preparation that goes with what they're seeing as an increase in food, that we could maybe outline that they use different restaurants in our community.
Absolutely. Those are
Okay.
good questions. Let's ask either Natalie, David, or either David and Natalie, if when we give this money to these nonprofits, can we ask or can we mandate that they basically spread the monies around to different hotels?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Gondeta, we can do something along those in the contract. We do generally require that when they expend funds within the boundaries of the city of Las Cruces, so we can keep that money within our jurisdiction.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay,
Great.
good. That's great. And I think that's it, Mayor.
Okay, so we have
I guess I didn't feel like I feel like I went on and on about the Cruces Creatives and the PPEs and whatnot. And make sure that we had some connection there. I think this is really going to be helpful as we move forward, and they seem to have things pretty well set up. And so I'd really like for us to look at giving some funding to Cruces Creatives.
okay, can we come back to that one on the second round? Okay, great. So we have Councilor Beta-Stuvi and then Councilor Bencomo again. So.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all the city staff who helped work with everything. Most of my comments really echo my colleagues, and so I don't want to go over that too much in light of time and everything. But I do want to make mention, as we were talking last week with the hospitals, and as we look for what might happen in the next 3 weeks, I do think we need to consider what we might need as far as preparations during what's being called our surge potential for seeing patients, and what we might need to do to protect our community and help with the medical community for any sort of resources that they might need. I'm not sure what that looks like, what we can do with that, but it's something that in the next, I would say, I think they're guessing right now in about 3 weeks, we might start seeing our highest level numbers of those affected. And we know that there are lower resources right now. So if there's any way that the city can help acquire, build up sort of a little stockpile on those, everything from the PPEs to any other sort of necessary items, and looking if we in Las Cruces, if we are still going to have to continue to drive our testing kits up to Santa Fe, what does it look like to see what we need to make sure that we can test here in Las Cruces? What type of equipment is necessary here so that we can get those faster results? And I know this is a conversation that probably needs to happen with the Department of Health, with the state, to see what that looks like. But we know that when this time comes, there's going to be a lot of activity. And if we can help as much as possible in our own city, we will have better success and better results for our patients.
Okay, good. No, good point. So before I get to Councilor Bencomo, so what I want to do is just make sure that these agencies, 2, 4, 6, 8 agencies that we have identified, I'm going to presume that we want to increase Casa de Peregrinos to 75,000, Mesilla Valley Community of Hope 75,000, Community Action Agency 75,000, all in amendments there. And if we can just kind of focus on this first, and then move on to the next section, and then other things that you may want to discuss, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, so with that, Councilor Bencomo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question might actually fall under other things I want to discuss, but I'll throw it out now because I think it's, I want staff to maybe think about it. I wonder, have we received any sort of update information confirmation around the federal stimulus package and the monies that are supposed to come to municipalities through the state, and wondering the timeline on it, wondering how we can use that money. So I would like to know if we have an update on that. Again, I don't have to have the answer now. I can wait till later.
No, I saw that we'd been approved for, I think it was like 1.25 billion, I believe. But we'll let staff come up to that if that's okay towards the end. Update on federal money. Okay, so Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a question again? Or did you not forget to
Yes,
remove your
Mayor.
hand?
Let me just also recommend, and I don't know if I said this, but Catholic Charities sent me an email and they work also with many of our indigent or undocumented, are especially providing services in the legal services to our DV La Casa. And so I was hoping that, Natalie, that maybe this is a way of incorporating Catholic Charities, especially around the legal piece, into the La Casa contract. Is that possible?
So you basically want to know if La Casa can subcontract out to Catholic Charities?
Yeah. Yes.
Let's get Natalie and
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Gandara, we do have an existing contract with Catholic Charities.
Oh,
They
okay.
are a current recipient of health-related public services. That resolution was anticipated to come forward on May 4th. We could bring health-related public services forward sooner, but my recommendation would to just increase that pot of funding for all those agencies, if it's not necessarily COVID related.
Okay, good. Thank you, Natalie.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Natalie.
Councilor Flores. Councilor Flores, did you wish to speak?
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah?
Yeah, you're on. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I agree with everything my fellow councilors have stated. I agree. I think we are all very frustrated, and I too would have expected staff to move on in some of these areas a little bit quicker, but this is the way it's going. And I am very appreciative, however, of all the work that they have done regarding this emergency we are faced with. As far as the letter from Mr. Ferrone, Kenneth Ferrone from Catholic Charities, and his request for assistance, I have a question. Well, I agree with what Councilor Gandara has said about assisting them because they have provided a lot of services to the indigent, the legal services. And I'm thinking about the fact that we don't have a rent control statute in the state of New Mexico, so people are going to be facing eviction, and the stay on the order on the stay for eviction still requires people to go to court, whether they do it, whether they make a virtual appearance or not, they're needing help. And I know I said this last Monday, that Angelica Rubio has reached out to New Mexico Legal Aid to see if they'll be coming forward to help people out. But with that money, because Catholic Charities does provide legal services, they will be able to use that money towards eviction for people who qualify, because they have to qualify anyway. and to the satisfaction of the judge that that they really are in dire need and cannot pay their rent. So I think that we should definitely set money aside, perhaps $75,000 that we could do today to get that moving. Because yeah, 2 days ago, people will, you know, soon hereafter, people will be facing evictions. People will not regard the landowner, the landlord won't necessarily abide by, well, there's nothing to abide by because evictions can happen, or excuse me, a writ of can issue regarding an eviction. So I think we should move in that direction. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilor. Two things. One, Mr. Ferrone, I received this last night, and that's too late to get it on this agenda. I don't know when you received it, but I got it last night. And so I don't have a problem in putting it on our next agenda for next week.
Thank you. That would be great.
And I can't stress this enough, that if there's any concern that what was listed from this list, I take full responsibility, because from our meeting last on Monday the 30th, I kind of even reviewed it, the areas that we were going in, of course, and then the reason why I had the amounts was for expediency. And I knew that there was going to be a little bit of a challenge regarding the Together Las Cruces Fund. So if I may, Councilor, so I can have it for our next council meeting, you said you'd wish staff had moved a little bit quicker. Which ones were you wanting? And again, I have to take responsibility for that because that was my list that put together. So it wasn't them. This was based on the discussion that we had on the 30th. So can you tell me, so I can have it for our next council meeting, what specifically you wanted us to, the city to look at?
Are you asking me or anybody?
No, you, because you said.
I specifically, no, it's just that we're getting information today, and of course maybe because we're getting information and perhaps it's not sufficient to move forward in an expeditious manner or as expeditiously as we would have liked. That was my comment there. Okay. As far as Mr. Ferrone's request for Catholic charities, excuse me, I do appreciate you putting it on the agenda for our next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. And I think, well, I think we could at our next meeting, if we can have staff put together some type of exemptions in our code as far as how we're dealing with things. Jennifer, can you speak a little bit more to that, please, on how we can assist contracting new services in an emergency situation? And what the city council can do?
Yes, Mayor and Council, you can change it. Your exemptions exist in the procurement code. So there are exemptions. I can't remember how many. There's a list of several exemptions where things do not have to go through the entire procurement process. It does still require that you have contract approval, but you can add things to that list of exemptions, and you can also specify and clearly define in the event of an emergency, especially one that has been proclaimed by the mayor, and then it would trigger those exemptions.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll work on that as well. So thank you for that. Okay, so getting back to, let's see who else. So as far as the first portion of this list, we're good. It looks like just increasing those that were at 50 to 75,000. So if we can go to the second part now, I think, does anyone have any questions? I think we talked about the 100,000 for the essential supply fund, and that's the one where Mayor Pro Tem had wanted to make sure that we had goods for those that needed it, specifically diapers and formula and things of this nature. The drivers and the COVID test kits. Oh, let me ask something, Jennifer. I recently received an email about some items, PPEs, that are available outside the state. And so when I forwarded to, I don't know if I forwarded to the hospitals or forwarded to the state, and it came back saying that that the governor had wanted us to only use PPEs that were either manufactured or bought within New Mexico. Are you aware of anything like that?
I'm not aware. I can look
Okay.
into that though.
I need to look into that more. I mean, this was just, I mean, I get, a lot of emails, and I thought that was very unusual, but I'll look in that. So are these,
Mayor, this is David
Yes.
Maestas, if I could add to that. There is one of the public health orders, a declaration from the governor, and the main concern isn't so much where it's coming from, it's if it has been approved by FDA. There are certain PPE that the Department of Health wants to make sure we aren't just purchasing and giving to people, first responders, or anybody who may need them, and they may not be effective, or they may not have been proven to meet FDA requirements. That's probably the documentation that you're talking about that you received.
Okay, thank you, David. I appreciate that.
You're
Councilor Vasquez, you have a comment?
Yes, Mayor. I do have a question for Jennifer. So under the ordinance that we just passed, giving emergency powers to the mayor under an emergency proclamation, if I recall correctly, there was a provision in there that allows the mayor to use financial resources needed to respond to an emergency. We didn't set a cap on that. So potentially, if the mayor were to issue an emergency proclamation, could he not then authorize resources in an amount greater than $75,000 to the very funds that we are looking at here today?
Mayor and council, that's correct. However, it would have to go back to city council for approval. And we certainly would still have to follow our own procurement code. Like I said, we can change the procurement code, but it would certainly have to go back to council for approval.
That's fine, and I think that's another option for us to look at in terms of how we get this money into these funds in an expedited way, Mayor. If that's a possibility under an emergency proclamation for you to allocate larger amounts, over 75,000 in the few coming days, I'm sure council would be happy to come back and look at those proposals. But just want to make sure that we're using that effectively since we just passed that ordinance. If it affords us ability to do that, we should consider that. So, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you.
No, good question. So Jennifer, if we were to do this on Friday and have the emergency declaration ordinance or verbiage first, then subsequently the next below that would be different amounts for some of these nonprofits that the counselor was talking about increasing it. Can that be done? Basically what I'm trying to say is in the same day, same meeting, as long as the declaration is done first and then allows me to do what needs to be done to increase those amounts. Is that possible?
I'll have to look more carefully at the chronology of what that would look like. But I think the intent here was that we will bring forward the amendments, and that can be done fairly quickly too. Once the amendments to the contracts, the existing contracts happen, all you need is 72 hours to approve those contracts. And I think that's kind of where we were moving toward, is get this money going first and quickly, and then we'll work on those amendments as quickly as possible and bring them forward for your approval. Either way, okay. It's going to take about the same amount of time.
But it's also good though, since Councilor Vasquez brought it up, to probably have that added to the other emergency declaration to be able to do, I don't know, to be able to, well, I guess if we have this new ordinance, I guess it's going to address us going to higher amounts anyway. So I see what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see. I think that's it. Okay, so let's go to this 75,000 for the test kits and meal delivery. We're good with that, council? Next will be the PPEs for city staff. Now, so Mayor Pro Tem was asking about creative, what is it called?
Las Cruces Creatives. Mayor.
Las Cruces Creative. And so I think Natalie mentioned, I guess we could, do we have a contract with them right now, or I guess that's small enough so we can go directly to them using them?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have a contract with Community Creatives, and I'll have to defer to either legal or procurement on the ability to contract with them.
Okay.
Without a procurement process.
Mayor, if I may, I did make mention that they lease out that building from Families and Youth Incorporated. So I wondered if council agreed that it could be tied into families and youth specifically for the production of masks. I don't know if that's viable or even lawful, if you will.
I don't know. Whoever wants to take that, Jennifer, I'm going to refer to you. Did you hear Mayor Pro Tem asking if we could have families and youth use Cruces creatives to make these masks for city staff, really? I mean, if they're going to be used for city staff, I would think that they could do that.
Not only city staff, Mayor, but our child welfare work,
Okay.
Providing home visits, our school staff, that kind of thing.
Gosh, I would think that if it's all for government, I don't see why there would be a problem with that. But anyways, Jennifer, did you want to jump on, address that, please?
Mayor and council, if you're talking about leasing the building for that purpose, I guess it would determine, we would have to determine what the actual purpose is, or if they're just using a city building. I'm not clear.
Mayor Pro Tem, what is it? Were you talking about a lease, or were you talking about them making masks for city staff?
No. I'm trying to get around the fact that we don't have a current contract with them. And if it helped, Families and Youth Incorporated leases that building to them where they are producing the masks. And if that was a better way to expedite giving them funding.
Funding for masks?
The production of the masks, yes.
And the masks to be used for what it sounds like all government individuals.
Yes, sir.
Mayor and council, whether or not they use a building or how they use a building, if they're going to provide a service to the city, we still have to follow our own ordinances. So we would still have to have some kind of agreement in place that we are providing you this funding for X, Y, and Z. And that still would need to occur. And whether or not it would meet the $74,000 threshold, it has to be under 75, not 75, but just under 75. So that it's still determined by what our procurement code said.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, so we have Councilor Flores.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. But insofar regarding the masks, David and you, Mr. Mayor, David Maestas and you brought up the issue that the governor has quote, asked, unquote, that the masks be FDA approved.
I just thought I read somewhere, but I'm not really that good at
David
verifying.
David clarified. No, I understand that. I believe Mr. just clarified that. I believe he said they had to be approved by the FDA. So I just want to make sure that whatever we do is consistent with what and I don't know, was the mayor, was the governor's statement about that an ask, or was it a directive? Was it an order? And that's what I would like to know about that. Do you know, Mr. Maestas?
Yes, Mayor, Councilor Flores, it was one of the public health order amendments that was sent out. I believe it was on the 24th or the 25th. Now that, keeping in mind, that's more specific to first responders or people who are in the line of assisting potential other patients or people that may be in contact with someone who has had the virus. With something like this, if we are using the mask just as a potential area of precaution, that may be something that helps out, but we don't want the people who are using them to be under the impression that this mask is going to completely protect them from concerns. We want them to know that this might be a level of comfort for you, but it's not FDA approved.
So how would we then reconcile the fact that under the, say, for example, going into the homes of LCPS students, to install the computers or deliver them or whatever. And also, and then also our staff here who are dealing with the public. So it's only for health providers, Mr. Maestas? Is it limited to that, the restriction, excuse me, the order? Or is it more expansive insofar as health concerns and contagion potential is concerned?
Sure, that's a great question, Councilor Flores. I would have to reread the order. It's been a couple of days since I've seen that, so I couldn't tell you what the specifics were. But again, the main concern, and you bring up a good point, if we were to ask somebody to be walking into a room and potentially that person that's in there either had the virus or is quarantined for some reason because they were in close contact with somebody that did, then we would very much be concerned saying you're going in there with a mask that's been approved by FDA if it hasn't. That doesn't mean that they can't go in with their own mask. People are buying masks off the shelves at stores, and they do have a level of comfort wearing those. They do have a level of feeling better about their situation. But we would definitely be concerned saying that this is an approved mask if we gave it to somebody.
And thank you, Mr. Maestas, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Looks like we have Barbara. Did you want to say something, De Leon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Councilor Flores, I did have some additional information regarding that public health order. As David Maestas mentioned, it was a public health order from March 25th, and it temporarily regulates the sale and distribution of personal protective equipment. It does have some stipulations, Mayor, with respect to the sale of this equipment. First, it requires anybody with an inventory of PPE to report that to the Department of Health. We do that. For example, the fire department is reporting their levels of inventory of PPE. And then it stipulates that a healthcare provider or supplier cannot sell PPE outside of New Mexico without prior approval from the Department of Health. And it also says that they cannot sell PPE, period, without prior approval from the Department of Health. So it's really regulating the sale of PPE within the state and then from suppliers within the state to out-of-state purchasers. And it covers just the management and the reporting of inventory of PPE in order to try to mitigate shortages and manage supply where necessary.
Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that. I thought I read something about the sale. I wasn't too sure exactly how it went, but okay, good. Thank you. Councilor Flores, you didn't put your hand down, or you have another question? You probably didn't put your, okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I didn't put my hand down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And reviewing, I think all of us received the fire department's situation summary, and some of the items in terms of their supply lists are running pretty low. And so I just want to make sure that not only law enforcement, but our firefighters have the necessary things. So they're looking at, they have currently stocked in terms of the masks, but they're getting no gowns in stock. And so hand sanitizer, minimal quantities, safety glasses, minimal quantities, decontamination wipes, minimal quantities as well. I just feel like we need to make sure that they have what they need. And so I think that this is a great way, again, to partner with a local 501c3 to help. And all of you have the things that may not be FDA approved, but certainly can help our firefighters and law enforcement officers. For example, the shields that these people are making and such. And Mayor, just to remind you, I think we both received, or I know I did, I'm sorry, days are crossing and whatnot, but I did receive a email from former counselor Greg Smith about an individual that has connections to a company out in China that it lives here and would love to start production of masks. And so I will forward, I believe I forward that to David Maestas and Dr. Martinez in hopes that they could do some research about that too, because at the end of the day, again, I feel strongly we have to stimulate our economy, and that would be one way to do that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm looking for an email from Lenny, the Chief of Staff to Chancellor Arvizu. Believe it or not, when we worked with, we're discussing the developing disinfectant and such. I know I got something here. I mean, my emails are just slammed here. That they were actually working on masks here locally. So that's I'll get that here in a minute. After one of you all start talking, I'll look through that. So, okay. So other than the economic development of 7,500, everyone's good with the list for now, other than a couple of things that we need to do some amendments. Oh, Councilor Bencomo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question about the utilities fund and if that would be available immediately or if that would take some time to go into that fund.
I saw Dr. Garcia on the, let's see here. I think I saw that.
I'm here, Mayor.
Yes, there you are.
Yes, as you know, this fund is to supplement the bills or the inability to pay the bills. What happens is we manage this fund through Casa de Peregrinos, but it's really a move of funds from the general fund to the utility fund. So we will do this immediately. We will work with the budget office and this would be available immediately. We've had lots of calls, actually about 98 calls recently with people wanting help for the March bills. So we only have 24,000 left. So this is very useful funds that we will put to use immediately.
Great.
Thank you.
And Mayor Pro Tem, I found the email. It says, this is from the Chief of Staff. It says, we currently are undertaking making face shields and delivered our first prototypes yesterday to local hospitals. I'll ask our task force to vet this request. The raw materials to achieve the N95 standard could be the issue. I'll let you know as soon as we collect information. So, okay, we're good. So you guys ready to hear what the 7,500 was, the economic crisis flash assessment? Okay, hit the video. Not yet. Just hold on a second.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor.
If you have a minute, I can introduce this.
But I think
Is he ready?
I think Davin's ready to go.
Is he ready? Okay, good then.
I'm here. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council. How are you today? I first want to say, as a resident of Las Cruces, I appreciate all your proactiveness and leadership in this, what we have going on today.
Wait, hold on a second. Do you guys see him? No. Hold on a second.
If I can yes, I can see him.
Gavin, if you could go maybe in another room, I think it's just picking up the audio on the computers.
Oh.
On his microphone.
Oh, thanks. Hold on a second.
Give me 1 minute.
So you know what? I'll just let him change places. Just a little up here. I think so. Well, it shouldn't be a problem.
Spray. Spray.
We're good? Okay. Well, again, thank you for allowing me to be here today to talk a little bit about this flash assessment. Before I get going, however, I would like to answer the Mayor Pro Tem's earlier question about how Mavita is trying to be involved with assisting small businesses, if you may. First, let me say that we've been reaching out. Well, number one, we've been pushing out as much information on all the programs that have become available, from the PPP loans to SBA disaster relief. The State Investment Council is coming up with a $100 million loan fund. We're trying to learn more about that. We've been pushing all this information out via our social media, but we've also reached out to the state to ask how can we better help on the ground. Yesterday, we actually had a meeting with, or should I say a conference call with Secretary Schroer, who's leading a similar effort at the state level of how do you distribute information. They're talking about a train the trainer program. And Mavita, we have volunteered, if that's the direction they want to go, we have volunteered as a regional economic development organization to participate in that with them and help better provide the right information and handhold the companies on all of these programs that are coming out. So we hope to hear from the governor's office early next week, as if that's the route they're going to take. So Mayor Pro Tem, I hope that might answer your question in terms of what we're doing in that respect.
Thank you, Devin.
Okay. Turning to the flash assessment, about a month ago, when we anticipated the severity of what was happening here, we started participating in a number of webinars and a number of conversations with our peers in economic development really across the country. One thing became clear was that for communities to respond, we're going to need to understand what this looks like, the after effect is going to look like. And right now, it's hard for anyone to predict what that may mean. What we do know is that companies are shifting, and we're seeing local companies shift their business models as well. How long this pandemic goes on will probably determine, are these permanent shifts or not? And culturally speaking, among consumers, how are we going to be changing our habits that local entrepreneurs need to adapt to? Let me give you an example. Obviously, curbside is a big change. That may be something permanent. Later on, does that affect the real estate of the actual restaurant if they're doing more of their business doing curbside? Do people want to have more social distance within a restaurant itself? Does that change their footprint, construction walls, whatever needs to be put up based on the length of this behavior? The other thing that we know is going to come out of this is the need for more telework. We see that happening already. We see some companies being able to shift to that, other companies cannot. Unfortunately, as we know, we never expected a month ago that as of yesterday, we would have 28,000 unemployment claims. That is up 13 or 14,000 from last week alone, which is up about 14,000 from the week before that. We don't know what next week's going to look like. I reached out to Secretary McCamley about what's happening with Las Cruces unemployment claims. They don't have those answers quite yet. He said maybe in a week or two, we may have more information. But that combined with the fact that we know what's shut down, lots of retail is completely shut down. Our call center industry basically is ordered to be shut down. That's 1,500 employees right there that we don't know if they're on the unemployment claims list, if they've already filed, or if we're going to see that in the next reflection. So there's a lot of unknowns. And as we get into predictive modeling as to what it's going to look like in 3 months or 6 months, we can have educated guesses as to the inputs we're going to be putting into this model. We're going to be down 20% in this industry, 30% in this industry, maybe up in this industry. But I think what we really need to understand is, what are the entrepreneurs, what are the businesses really thinking? Are they going to be shifting their models? And then we need to understand what they're thinking to be able to put that input into our modeling and analysis. So we actually reached out to the Community Economics Lab. They're based in Albuquerque. The gentleman who founded that is named Mark Loudman. He's been doing economic development for the last 40 some years in both New Mexico and across the country. He was one of the original kind of dreamers and founders of the original development team down in Santa Teresa, which has brought all that together over the years. He was the advisor to Mesa del Sol's development in Albuquerque, where Albuquerque Studios is on. He's in past 10 years started Community Economics Laboratory, which is really a think tank. And when we approached him and talked about this type of need, he had mentioned they are already working on such modeling. So our conversation would be a stipend of $7,500, basically to pay them for this analysis. And the way the analysis, as explained to me, would work is we would do a charrette of sorts. And that charrette obviously would have to be online, it would have to be virtual. But we would bring businesses into the room across a variety of different sectors, from hospitality to builders to restaurants to manufacturers, and it'd be a charrette asking the questions. What are you predicting your model is going to look like based on, if we're out of this in 2 weeks, maybe we're back to normal. If we're out of this in 3 months, it may be a completely different situation. So it's to develop this charrette, ask the questions, get the answers, and put these answers back into their modeling so we can have a better predictive analysis as to what the future looks like depending on the length of this pandemic. So in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is, when the curtain opens up and life and business is going to change, what does it look like and what's the impact at that point? So I'll leave it with that to answer any questions you might have.
So Griselda, Dr. Martinez. Dr. Martinez, are you there? Okay, well, we'll skip. We'll go to Councilor Flores has a question.
Click on the phone. Okay.
No, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, so
I'm sorry,
Flores.
I forget to unmute. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Lopez. So you've given us a picture of what has happened up until now, but there's no way of projecting how it's going to end up. Is that correct? That you really can't make any predictions at this point based on the information and developments we've had up until now?
That is correct. There's, going back to Councilor Vasquez's comment about this is unprecedented. No one knows what's going to happen. We're all making educated guesses at this point.
Thank you very much. And then will you be hearing from Bill McCamley about how we've been impacted here in Las Cruces, or is it information that did he say he'd be gathering that information, or?
He had told me that the initial claims do not offer a geography, and they're going to have to go back and review that as more claims come in. He told me about a week to 2 weeks they should have more information on the geography of where those 28,000 unemployment claims are going to come from.
If I could say,
I'm thinking that presumably because we are the second largest city, that a lot of them will come from Las Cruces.
if I may say, what's interesting, Counselor, is what we're doing here today. We never would have done a video conference because we always met in person. And I think you're going to see businesses now that they've been forced to learn how to do this. What does that mean for even restaurants? Are they going to now put the focus on drive-through? Because what if this happens again? And so I think that what this assessment does is be able to get this out to our business people in the city to see what the trends are and maybe start thinking about that. I have to tell you, when I drive and see Chick-fil-A with 2 full lanes, I mean, these guys plan for drive-through, and so these are things that this has changed the way we do business, both from a city government and also from a consumer standpoint as well.
Yes, that's true. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Lopez.
Dr. Martinez, are you available? For some reason, can't see. Okay, well, we'll just go to Councilor Abeyta Stubbe.
Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Lopez. I do think this is going to be something that our businesses need to look at. In all reality, until there is some sort of vaccine that can happen, the chances of us having to deal with a very similar situation in the upcoming fall and winter are very high. Again, this is still a moving issue. And so I think it will be very important for our businesses to know how to adapt and those trends to look for, because even after, best case, the next couple months, 3 months, and we may get to go back to normal, but there's a high probability of us having to pull back again and adjust for any sort of reoccurrence. And until, like I said, we get vaccines, we get some of that immunity buildup, there's high probability of us having to be in very similar situations again this fall. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Dr. Martinez, are you available? All right, Amy just had her hand up. Okay, so that's it for Davin. I can change places again.
Thank you.
Oh, Councilor Sword.
Yeah, thank you. I was listening carefully. It doesn't come to any surprise that economically this is going to affect different sectors differently. Some sectors a lot, and some sectors not so much. And I think this kind of a study would help us understand what possibly we could do to help sectors, what to do in the future, put it that way. So it seems like a good thing to do. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so let's get back to the possible amendments. And this question I need to ask our city attorney, Jennifer Vega Brown. So earlier, like for example, even taking La Casa and La Piñon, where I have it at 75,000, is it your recommendation that we reduce that to say 74,999 or 74,500? Or are those okay? That's one question. And then the other, when we increase Casa de Peregrinos, Sea Valley Community Hope, and the Community Action Agency, do we increase that to 74,500 or 74,999? Or I need a little bit of clarification on that, please.
Mayor and Council, yes, the total amount of services paid has to be under 75. The procurement code says 75,000 or 75,000 or more has to be approved by council. So it would have to be under 75. So yeah, 74,500, yes.
74,500 is okay? Yeah.
Yes, and it would have to be for total. You can't split it up into two separate contracts. It has to be the total amount of service.
Okay, so this next question will be for Christine. So Christine, so let's take, for example, La Casa. We may have to reduce that by $500. Does that need to be, can the council member, they need to do each one individually, or can we do them all in one amendment, one motion?
Mayor, the resolution is written for a total of 1 million. So I would amend it for a total amount based on all the changes. Okay, but so when we go back to, let's say, for example, can a council member say, I want to make a motion to change the Casa to 74,500, La Piñon to 74,500, Casa Peregrinos, increase that to 74,000. That's what I'm trying to get. Can they make that all in one motion, or would you prefer that they be individually motioned and voted on? I think we should do them individually.
Okay. Okay, so with that, then on the, I'll need someone to make a motion and a second to change La Casa's funding from 75,000 to 74,500 to meet the threshold of the city's procurement.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, who made the motion? Who made the second?
Gabe Vasquez.
Okay,
Made the
Councilor Vasquez and Councilor Beta-Stuvi second?
Yes.
Okay, did someone, was that David Dollahan who said something or no?
Yes, Mayor, sorry.
Okay.
I didn't want you to get to too many amendments before I brought this up. This is just a budget adjustment for authorization to set aside funds for these activities. Rather than, here's a thought, rather than amending the dollar amounts that we know you want to commit the dollar amounts that you want, and we'll take 2 steps to fix this contract amendment. We'll contract amend up to the 74.5, and then for the additional money that you've committed, then we'll work on bringing back a second contract amendment through council action. So you don't have to look at bringing back more money. You're going to cause us to do 2 steps, a budget adjustment now, and then a budget adjustment later, and a contract review. I would say, just if you're going to give the money, set aside the money, and then we'll work through the procedural requirements on the contracts. We'll do an administrative step first, and then a second step to bring back the contracts for amounts above 75,000.
Well, okay, what council wants to be able to get this now to them, and that's why we're doing the under 75,000.
And Mayor, we can do that now.
Okay.
Up to the 74.5.
Okay.
And then for any dollar amounts that we also know they're going to need, and to be responsive to them, then we can come back with the contract exemptions, contract amount above the 75 at the next earliest meeting. But you're not having to do a budget adjustment twice.
Okay, so, well, let me just do this here. So 13.
I think our attorney wants to say something.
I don't know. Let's see. I don't see it. Jennifer, did you have a comment?
No, Mayor and Council, I agree with David Dollahan. That would be the easiest way to do it.
Okay, and -5. So basically, we're looking at a budget adjustment of about 73,000. So it would basically make it up to $1,073,000. Which what that does is it takes the 3 La Piñon, Casa de Peregrinos, and the Mississippi Valley, Casa de Peregrinos, Mississippi Valley Community Hope, and Community Action Agencies all to 74.5, and it brings down a couple of those. Oh, okay, so it'd be actually 72.5. Okay, so 1,072,500 would be the amount that we're amending the amount to be transferred from.
I will retract my previous amendment.
And Councilor Stuvey, you'll remove your second?
Same as well.
Okay, so then we'll need an amendment to motion to amend the budget adjustment to $1,072,500 to be used for to increase the fundings for Casa de Peregrinos, Mississippi Valley Community of Hope, Community Action Agency, and bring it into line La Casa and Lampiñon to the city's thresholds.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion made by Councilor Vasquez, second by Councilor Beta Stuvey. Is there any questions? Okay, and then, so on the amendment, Christine?
Yes, no, Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilor Bencomo.
Can you help clarify for me what we landed on with the community action, the community foundation? Is that not going to be included in the amendment, or are we doing that?
No, that's going to be, I'm going to discuss our next council meeting, not our next special council meeting, which will probably be next Friday. But in there, I have in here where we're going to be working to look at how to work with together Las Cruces, at the very minimum, the 74,500, but then also to see what exemptions we can make under our code, city's code, to, but I think it's still going to have to be vetted through the city attorney's office.
Okay, I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Okay, so Christine, this is on the amendment?
This is on the amendment. Resolution 20-132 to change the amount to $1,072,500. So Counselor Abeyta-Stube. Counselor Vasquez.
Yes.
Counselor Bencomo.
Yes.
Counselor Sorg.
Yes.
Counselor Flores.
Yes.
Counselor Gandara.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and go to we're on the main motion. So this is encompassing all the community partners as well as that identified as City of Las Cruces for which is resolution 20-132. So it's been moved and second. So if there's nothing further, Christine, if you call the vote, please.
This is on the motion to approve resolution 20-132 as amended. Counselor Abeyta-Stube.
Yes.
Counselor Vasquez.
Yes.
Counselor Bencomo.
Yes.
Counselor Sorg.
Yes.
Counselor Flores.
Yes.
Counselor Gandara.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. Okay, before we adjourn, let me just tell you what I'm thinking here. So we'll have another meeting, say next Friday, the 10th at the same time, 9:30. And at that meeting, we'll hopefully by then staff will be able to have looked at the Together Las Cruces Fund. And at the very minimum, if they can, again, I don't know how they're going to do it, but if they can make it so that we can do the 74,500 for them. Also 74,500 for Catholic Charities. And also, and this one here, I need a little bit more clarification. Jennifer, did we need to add the exemptions under our code at this meeting on Friday or not?
Mayor and council, I'll leave that up to the city manager. We could try to get that prepared. I don't know if I'll defer to the city manager.
Okay. Well, he happened to have his hand up. So David, did you have something you'd like to say?
Yes, Mayor. I figured this question was coming, so I put my hand up in advance. As I mentioned in the last meeting when we're talking about these type of items, what I'll do is I'll get with staff today sometime to find out if we think we might have the ability to have that exemption to the procurement code ready. We would like to, but we'll work on that for you. I also would like to take this opportunity just to pass on to council and to you, Mayor. We fully understand the concerns and the frustrations when we talk about the items that we want to try and put in place and what constraints we have. We understand the concerns and frustrations because we go through them as well as we're trying to implement and put together the requests that have been sent to us. When we do bring them up, we're not bringing them up as a roadblock or something that is a deal breaker. We bring them up to let council know that these are the items that we have to go through for a couple of reasons. One, so that council is informed of what the potential constraints are going to be, and also so that council does have an idea that it may not move as quickly as we would hope based on having to work around some of these items. So I just wanted to pass that on so that council is aware for their information and to let you know that staff fully understands the concerns and frustrations because we go through them as well. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that, David. And I appreciate you saying that because, and again, even as many years as I've got, I mean, there's a few that we've never experienced something like this. And so I too had a few questions, but nonetheless, that's why we have you all there to make sure that we do the best we can and stay within. We all took oaths to uphold the laws of the state of New Mexico, and that anti-donation is a big one. So I'm going to ask you all who have great relationships, as do many of us with our legislators, that has to be something that looked at next time the governor declares the emergency declaration. We don't need this thing hindering us like it's doing right now. So I have a Councilor Sorg and then Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Gandara who had something they'd like to speak. Councilor Sorg?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It's too late to change this, maybe not. But the $7,500 to go for the economic crisis flash assessment, I was thought rather than that having to come out of the TELSHOR fund like our resolution is saying, that it should come out of the Department of Economic Development's budget.
Oh, well, I mean, that small amount, I guess that can be done administratively, but at least that's where we have it earmarked. And you never know, we may be getting funding from the state, and they may want to know where we spent it on in relation to COVID-19, and that may, by moving it out of a different fund, may not allow us to get reimbursed. By having it here, at least we know where we can keep track of the expenses we've used in pertains to this current situation.
Well, that's a good point. If we do get some reimbursement, and I would expect there is some, then that's a good point to do that. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to my colleagues for being so patient and really expressing your deep desire to help our most vulnerable. I would like to put on the agenda the discussions around Las Cruces Creatives, Communities United, and also I know that Dr. Martinez is working on the small business microloan program. I'd like to see if that is ready so that we can administer those grants to our small business. And Mayor, I will forward that email that I received from Councilor Greg Smith, or former Councilor Smith, as it relates to that particular company wanting to produce mass quantities of the PPEs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Payades, you have a comment? Oh, looks like you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
So just to provide a couple of points to Councilor Gandara, Dr. Martinez is having problems with her phone right now, so she wasn't able to speak, but she's able to listen. Yes, we are exploring that ability of conducting the technical assistance for small businesses that lead to microlending. We're currently in the process of an RFP for that. Besides that, we were also exploring some of the things that Albuquerque has been able to do with the grants program for small businesses. And we're actually in the stages of, we already discussed with the city of Albuquerque and seeing in which way they were able to fulfill this program. Right now, we're in the analysis, in the internal analysis of how can we make that happen as well. So just a couple of the things that we wanted to mention. Besides this, we're doing a comprehensive campaign, a campaign that at least touches every business in the city. We try to connect them from Mandy's section, the business development section. We try to connect them with the resources that have been provided by the state and by the federal government. We've been in contact with the chambers. We've been in contact with Mavita. And also with regards to that study that you were mentioning, the thing that we wanted to mention is that we created an analysis within the budget office and the economic development department that we sent to you. So that some of the estimates that we have for what could happen immediately in our economy. So hopefully you had a chance to review that. And with that said, those are some of the things that from the economic development department we're currently working on.
Thank you, Dr. Payades. Let me ask you a quick question. I would think that, I'm going to guess that we probably have at least half of the registered businesses in Las Cruces email address. And if so, do you think we may, or maybe you've already done this, we could send them just a quick link to the various programs that the federal government has put out? I know you just said it, but if we have that email address, if there was a way to get that to them, might be quicker as well. I mean, because everyone gets bombarded with things, but if we have one that's geared toward them specifically, might be beneficial.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, we're actually doing that twice a week. Any news that comes in, any new guidance that we can provide from both the state, all the resources that the state has been able to provide, plus the federal government, we have been doing that and at least twice a week since the beginning of this pandemic declaration happened. Besides that, Mr. Mayor, we've been trying to carry a Go Local campaign, and Mandy is coordinating that portion as well, so that we can assist the businesses in any way we can do it right now. And again, we're trying to see how Albuquerque was able to create their grant program for small businesses and we're currently in the analysis of that as we speak.
Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. I don't mean to interrupt, but thank you, Dr. Baez, for your continued commitment in helping our small business. I appreciate all the work that you're doing remotely to assist our small businesses. Mayor, to your point about creating a foundation specifically to the city, I think you called it Adelante las Cruces. I love the I wonder if that would be a part of Dr. Bayatis and Dr. Martinez's and the staff's analysis as we move forward, because that seems to be able to sort of springboard or make it a more quick action, if you will.
Yeah, I copyrighted that name, by the way, so I just want to let you. So you want to know if we can have our economic development department look at creating something like this?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I agree. I agree totally.
Okay.
That was something there that because like for example, this is a kind of a similar. So the employees, I don't think they have it anymore, but when one would retire, if they got that gold watch, it didn't come from the city. It came from monies that they raised from an employee fund, and it's kind of the same thing. So it's connected to the city, but it's not city money. So.
Got it. And secondly, or shall I say finally, Dr. Bayatis, you made mention the request for proposals. I'd like to see or know if there's a time where we can anticipate that, and under these circumstances, can we expedite the RFP? I don't know if there is an ordinance and or state via the emergency that we might expedite the request for proposal.
Mr. Mayor and Madam Mayor Pro Tem, actually the RFP right now we're currently in the stages of finishing the writing portion of it. Curiously enough, the RFP, we started this process prior to the pandemic occurring, and right now we should be in the stages in which we can well, if not, we could be close of releasing the RFP. I would have to double check on exactly when we can make this, but we'll try to make it as soon as practical and as soon as our processes allow. Besides, I forgot to mention something previously, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, all the email blasts that we're doing to our local businesses are in both English and Spanish so that it can be reached to everyone. So we have taken that into account as well.
Thank you. Very
you.
important.
Okay, and if you're finished, Mayor Pro Tem, then it looks like Councilor Bencomo wishes to say something.
I am. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I heard something about a gold watch. I don't know when that's happening. Just kidding. I wondered, Mr. Mayor, I really would like to encourage us to do either a bilingual press conference or bilingual videos from the city relating to what we just passed. To ensure, my biggest fear, honestly, is that we'll be able to provide relief and that information won't trickle down to the people that need it most. And so I really want to make sure that we're diligent in doing that. I'm happy to volunteer or voluntold Councilor Vasquez to do Spanish content, but I think it's really critical and important. Also, in terms of thinking through an emergency declaration, which I'm strongly in support of, I think we need to seriously consider adding strong guidelines, mandating guidelines for essential businesses. I'm hearing from a lot of employees in essential businesses who are feeling really unsafe because a lot of businesses have seen an increase in customers. And so management has no incentive to limit customers. And so, but really putting at risk their employees and frankly, the entire community. And so I also think it's critical, right, that if somebody rolls up to a big store and sees a line outside, perhaps they'd rather turn around and go home than stay. So I really think that this is these strong guidelines, perhaps with guidance from MMC staff, I think would be really important.
Oh, good point. And so just a couple things before I get to Councilor Beta Stuvey. So I have a volunteer policy analyst, right? And I asked him, can you find a list of all the grocery stores and their websites and information, as well as hardware stores that are throughout the city. I mean, I think a lot of people, they might just shop at Sam's Club and Albertsons, but I mean, there's Lowe's, there's Fiesta Foods, there's Save Mart, there's the Toucan Market, and I guess those are one things, and then also hardware stores. It's not just Lowe's and Home Depot. There's Hayden's Hardware, there's Johnson's True Value Hardware, there's RTD Hardware. So when we get that together, I'll hopefully give it to a PIO or communications office, and then we can also put that out there. And because the information that we get, or I get the emails and I forward them to the chief police, is there's just a lot of people there at Home Depot. They're fixing up their home, but there's so many other different hardware stores in the city that it would be nice if the public knows about them as well, and it filters out and keeps them going as well. So I think that would be good. Before I forget, I get to count.
And then just real quick, I think mechanics and veterinarians, I think all these essential businesses who are just seeing an increase in customers, I think it's really important that they understand the danger they're putting people in by not limiting the number of people at their store.
Right. Before I forget, and I know Councilor Betastubi and Councilor Vasquez and the Mayor Pro Tem again, last week I inadvertently left out one of our media partners who does a great job in covering our news. I know they're doing it right now. They're also a person here stationed, that's Selena Madrid from KFOX News. I just wanted a big shout out to them. Okay, so Councilor Betastubi, you have a question?
Yes, well, it's just a follow-up of something that I mentioned earlier. I just think it's really important for the council to be able to know the numbers that we're expected to see here in Las Cruces in the next few weeks, of what those potential, surge patient numbers look like and what our community might experience. I know there's a lot of work being done at the state level on what the state is going to see, but as we move forward, we know that as the second largest city here, we're going to be taking in patients from the surrounding communities. And so I think it's going to be important that we get all that detail and then figure out if there's ways that we can help provide assistance if we do have gaps.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. Can't forget Telemundo. They also do a terrific job, and I know Cristal Corrales is here all the time.
Oh, yeah. In fact, sorry, Cristal. Yes, you do a fantastic job, too.
Before you get a call on that.
Apologize for that.
No, I think it's important to Councilor Bencomo's point, and from the last conversation we had with healthcare professionals at MMC, the cases in El Paso are doubling for coronavirus like every 2 to 5 days. And in fact, I think they had like 10 new cases yesterday. They're our sister city, our families, our businesses, our economies tied together. So even though we have, relative to maybe the rest of the state and the country, fairly low amount of cases, I consider El Paso to be part of our community. And so their cases are growing exponentially. And so I think we need to be aware of that in being prepared for, as Councilor Betastubi said, having to treat some of those patients. I know some folks from El Paso are already coming up here to get tests done. And so, potential contamination from that activity is real. So preparing ourselves before it gets worse is a good idea. I believe that if an emergency declaration helps to solidify perhaps the message that we're sending to our community to take this seriously, right? Not to follow the governor's guidelines, but also that here at the city locally, that we are serious about making sure that we get out in front of this quickly, because we've seen what the trends are nationally for cities and states that do take this seriously before it explodes. Their curve is a lot smaller. And so I think there's some good lessons learned in that hopefully, Mayor, you can think about, and if it's the appropriate thing to do, we can move on. Because I see the growth in El Paso, and it's a little scary for us here in Las Cruces. And so, and then the other thing I wanted to just bring up briefly while we're talking about potential for contamination is I did want to bring attention to the fact that there are over 400 workers coming in from out of the state into our border communities currently to build the border wall. And these out-of-state workers are coming under the direction of the Army Corps of Engineers and the federal government, because they've deemed the building of the wall to be an essential activity. And that means you have 400 folks in these makeshift man camps that are coming down to the border, including in Luna County, where they're actually setting up now. And again, that's our neighboring county. Those are folks in Deming. And so while we're trying to do everything we can to protect our citizenry, while the governor is trying to do everything she can, you know, it's kind of insulting, frankly, to have 400 plus people coming in to do non-essential business in my eyes. And so wanted us to be aware of that, because it poses a great threat for contamination. I don't believe it's an essential activity. And so far, it seems like, you know, no one's really doing anything about it. So, you know, I don't know what we could do as a city. And also working with our partner in the city of Deming to address this, perhaps a letter to the governor or something similar. But that's highly concerning to me, is that we're getting over 400 workers from out of state setting up in our community as we speak.
I'll text her later today. Do me a favor, and I'll send something to her. But for sure, we need to get something. It looks like David wants to jump in and say something. Maestas, David?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I wanted to address Councilor Abeyta-Stubbe's items about numbers and having information on that. Councilor Abeyta-Stubbe, if it is okay with you, I don't have a problem emailing the answers to the questions to all of the council and to Mayor that you posed to me a couple of days ago. I have reached out to the Department of Health and to the Office of Emergency Management. As Mayor and Council are aware, we meet regularly. You've seen some of the minutes now for the Joint Information Center conference calls that we have. We also have a separate group called the Multi-Agency Conference that we do also on a regular basis, at least once a week, sometimes more than that. And in that, they talk about readiness. There is a lot of information that the Department of Health and the Office of the Emergency Management cannot pass on due to privacy laws, HIPAA, also due to concerns of scams or terroristic attacks as well. So you may not get answers to all of the questions that you have, but they are looking at those, and they are making sure that they have preparedness for number of people that potentially they think they're going to have, number of beds that are available. And they do it statewide, not just in our community, not just Las Cruces, but they do it for the entire state. That includes also numbers for PPE and distribution of the PPE throughout. So to summarize, Councilor Abeyta-Stubbe, if it's okay with you, I can email all of council and mayor the answers to the questions that I am allowed to provide to those questions that you sent me.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, David. For council's knowledge, I sent a robust list of questions regarding this issue, and to try to see what it's going to look like for Las Cruces, and to make sure that we're as prepared as possible. There was talk as well with the governor having a field hospital as well. That's something that, but in all honesty, probably will not be here in Las Cruces. I can imagine that it will probably be situated more to near Albuquerque. But we know, and as Councilor Vasquez just said, we are getting patients from all over, and even in El Paso, and then we ourselves send out patients to El Paso too with acute care needs and those high-level trauma cases. And so we're going to need to have really clear communication that there are going to be other accidents that happen, people are going to be injured in other ways, and how we can make sure that the public knows what they can go in for, where they're going to go, I think will be very important. And the more prepared and the more knowledge we have on that prior to the surge, the better it will be, and the better we can respond. So I really appreciate that, David, to have you send that out to the rest of the council once you get that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Vasquez?
I apologize. I forgot to lower my hand, Mayor.
Oh, okay, no problem. Mayor Pro Tem Gandara?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the questions and that Councilor Abeta-Stubbe has asked. I'm finding it extremely critical, and honestly, I know I'm a licensed social worker and I understand about HIPAA and privacy laws and all the other stuff, but frankly, I think that as a government, my constituents voted me in to help sort of disseminate information and represent them. And this idea of the electeds not in any of these conversations know specifically what we can and cannot receive is concerning to me. I've asked again last week or whenever we had the last meeting, Colin, to basically, I think these are things that we're just not asking to ask. I think these are things that we really need to know to be able to distribute the information accordingly. I mean, we all, basically give an oath, right, to do the things that we need to do lawfully. And I don't think any of us would go spreading rumors about things. And I understand where the political piece of things, I understand that at the federal level, it appears like things are politicized to no end. And that's not what I'm about. And so I think for Councilor Stubbe to ask the questions that she's asking for us to get sort of to get the information that we need so that we can prepare our community on this. And so I continue to be very frustrated about not being a part of calls and different things. That's because our public is asking us and making sure that as a government we're prepared. And so I want to say that. Secondly, I do want to let the council know that I sent a list of phone numbers to UDEL after David, Mr. Maestas' approval to put some very viable calls and phone numbers and websites. For example, the Kids Talk, which is, and I want to say this publicly because I think it's important for our kids to know that we care about what's going on with them. There's a Kid Talk hour from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. They can call and or text a specific number, and that is, so sorry, even with my glasses, that's a problem, 575-636-3636. Again, our Children, Youth, and Families Department statewide central intake, that's 1-855-333-SAFE. That's 7233. Or from your cell phone, you can hit #SAFE to report child abuse and neglect. I'm also deeply concerned about suicide during these times. And AFSP.org has a COVID-19 campaign, all that have been agreed to put on our Channel 20 and our website, Mayor. So it's more of a shout out to all our community about, unfortunately, during these times, raises anxiety and violence. And I'm super concerned about when I hear from school staff that they can't reach certain families that are higher risk for some of these things. And so we need to make sure that we are incorporating these numbers and websites into our daily information. And so thank you, David and Udell, for doing that. And I agree that a lot more public service announcements need to be in English and Spanish, and out to our radio stations, Mayor, if we can do that. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I know David Maestas and Udell recently met with a gentleman who does all Spanish newspaper, and it's distributed throughout the county. So let's see, I think Mayor, let's see, Joanna, Councilor Bencomo.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was just reminded to not forget about our deaf and hard of hearing community as well, to ensure that all our communication is going out to folks in different accessible manners.
Okay, good point. Councillor Betastuvi, did you have a question or did you not take your hand down? Looks like.
Thank you, Mayor. I took my hand down, but I wanted to reiterate that I believe most of the questions that I asked Mr. Maestas, they should not be in violation of any HIPAA standards. They're asking for projections of those numbers. They're not asking for any patient identifiers. And they are asking for possible needs for the community. But like I said, all the questions that I have stay away from any patient identifiers.
Okay, great. Okay, if there's nothing further, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councillor Sorg, second by Councillor Flores that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? There is no opposition, so we adjourn. It's 11:40 a.m. and we'll see you all Monday.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.